Hi, Miranda. Thank you for doing this with me again.
Hi, Emily. It's an absolute pleasure to be here again.
Exactly. Well, because, it's been an honor to be a part of your career as a novelist, and you've just passed a major milestone in that this latest novel that you wrote, Answer the Phone, has put you up over 1 million sales in the 2025, 26. How many novels have you written?
It's either 28 or 29. I'm not
Oh my
100%
goodness.
sure.
See, that's what happens when you get into it. You lose count. So maybe we've lost count. I know I was there for the first five. And so it's wonderful. And I wanted to celebrate. And then I also wanted to get great information out to people who are working on their first novel and they want to see a good path forward. So I call this video What It Actually Takes to Sell 1 million Books. What would you say for people who are writing their first book? What do they need to focus on to see a clear path forward with their writing, to even sell 100 books, 1,000 books?
Okay, so my original goal was to sell 100 books of my very first book, which was I Want You Gone, and ideally not friends and family. And I never have actually set out to sell 1 million books. It's that was just, it seemed like a completely unreal dream. So it's what does it take? Well, a few things. I think first of all, you have to really understand your genre. So you need to know who is your reader, who is your ideal reader, what is it that they are expecting from your books. And I know there's a great temptation to think, oh, it's a bit boring writing, to these exact tropes of your genre. But the reality is that's what is expected. Yes, there needs to be a twist and something interesting. So I write psychological thrillers. So anybody who picks up my books, they're going to know that they're going to get a page turner with some hopefully unexpected twists in the middle and towards the end. And it's going to be a quick and an easy read. So I'm not interested in particularly the craft of writing. I'm interested in writing a really good story that's going to get people to read the whole way through my book. So that's number one. It's making sure that I meet the tropes, if you like, of the genre, and knowing who my readers are. And the second thing is working hard. And I do. I work really hard. I write 3 to 4 books a year. My process is pretty smooth now, and it allows me to have a good life when I'm not writing as well. I type really fast. But yeah, I work hard and I write every day. And a day that I'm not writing is not as good a day as the day that I'm writing. So I absolutely love the journey of writing. And I don't think that I could have got to where I am now if I didn't love it as much as I do.
Exactly. And that love is staying at the center because you love reading the genre that you write. And so there's that authentic connection there too. And because I've known you, I love the perspective that psychological thrillers weren't the first books that you wrote. These are the books that have just clicked in such a wonderful way, both with what you want to write and what reader and the emotions that readers want to feel. And so I'd love if you'd go back in time about some of the different things you tried before this particular genre just really clicked for you.
Okay, well, I'm going to show my age here. Um, so my very first book was published in 1999 by Bloomsbury Publishing, and that
Oh,
was a self-help
amazing.
book. I know, it's such a long time ago.
But it's
And
such
it
a
was,
nice publisher.
well, and it was for Harry Potter as well. So, Bloomsbury now, yay. So that was, it was actually about using handwriting analysis to assess compatibility in relationships. So that was non-fiction, quite light-hearted. Um, and then, um, gosh, I wrote the next book. I had a normal working life in between. And then I wrote my next book, I think in 2010, and that was a biography. Then I did a master's in writing, which I wouldn't. It's not necessary. With hindsight, it was good. It's good for the confidence. It's good for
Get a
learning
book
to
coach
critique and to
instead.
take criticism. But a book coach instead is absolutely the way to go. And yeah, I should have done that. I should have met Emily years before, but hey ho. Um, and then books, women's fiction books that will probably never see the light of day. And then when I first came to you, I had written a women's fiction book. And I wrote that because it was cathartic for me because I'd just come out the other end of having had bone cancer. Um, and and I loved the process of that, and we worked really well together. And then I wanted to carry on writing, and I do remember when I first contacted you and that I sent you that email and you said to me, what do you want to write? And I think I probably had about 3 pages of A4 of all the different ideas that I had of what I wanted to write,
I
which is kind
remember
of
reading
ridiculous
those.
because it was so scattergun. It was like literally all over the place, from fiction to non-fiction, every genre you could imagine. And then I think you said to me, well, what is it that you love reading the most? And it was like, well, actually psychological thrillers. So then I focused on psychological thrillers, and that's just become my, it's my sweet spot, and that's what I write. Yeah.
And that's such a great story because it shows that we all test different things, but everything is a part of the journey and it all comes together in the way it's supposed to. There's nothing, there's no milestone on the way to that that's irrelevant. And so on the topic of psychological thrillers, I'd love to see, don't answer the phone, and I'd love to talk about that a little bit. So first, what is this book about?
Honestly, I can't remember because I've already written the next book.
Oh my goodness. And that's so much fun. Read us the tagline. What does it say?
Okay, no, I can remember. I can remember. So it's about Daniela, and she rescues elderly Peggy from a mugger on a Boston street. So this book is set in the US, and it's the first of my books that is set in the US, and the one that's going to be coming
Interesting.
out in June, July, that will also be set in the States. And then she meets Peggy's son, Lucas, and he is devastatingly handsome and captivating, unlike her husband, who doesn't really see her. And she has one reckless night with him, and then her life goes completely spiraling out of control, and it's an absolute disaster. So it's a consequence of one action, doing one stupid thing, and then what happens after that. So, and that's Don't Answer the Phone. That's this book here.
That I
And
love
that
that because yes, it's so emotional and it's something that so many people can relate to. So of course, my next question is, this book is part of the reason that you were pushed over 1 million and it was under the Amazon top 200 in sales for a period of time. Maybe it still is. It's probably going to bounce back and forth. But I'd love to know, did you have the feeling that this would be an outlier, that it would sell more than the other book? I mean, your book sales are great, but this was, in a certain sense, a breakthrough. Do you have a feeling when you have a breakthrough book?
no,
And I could see
the
that
honest answer
coming.
is not a clue. I actually didn't even particularly rate this book. And, I remember saying to my editor, oh, I'm not sure about this one. I don't think this is very good. It's like, I'm not, I think no, this is definitely not one of my best books.
You're always modest.
Hey,
Yes.
what do I know? I haven't got a clue. For some reason, this one has captured people's attention. I've had, I'd say, 3 books that have really stood out above the others. I mean, I'm very lucky. Most of my books have got between 2 and 4,000 reviews on Amazon, ratings on Amazon. But this one, as you said, it's been in the top 100 in the UK, in Australia, Canada, and it got to about 150 on .com for quite a while. It's stuck there. So we have sold a lot of copies of this book, and honestly, I have no idea why. I don't know. I don't think it's particularly any different to my others. But for some reason, people seem to like it. So.
Which matches really well with the answer to your last question, in that it's really about exploring. You know, you can't tell. You can only find out through experience. And when you keep just showing up and working hard and having that regular practice, the sky's the limit. But if you get stuck in fear or perfectionism or whatever it might be, it really is about experimenting and work it when it's working. So that's great.
Yeah, I think it is just about putting it out there. If you don't put your work out there, you're never going to know, are you? No one's ever going to read it. And you just won't get that feedback. And if one book doesn't work, so you try the next one and the next one. So long as you enjoy the craft, so long as you actually enjoy writing, then you just got to give it a go.
Which is
That's worked for me.
exactly, and that's the perfect entry to this. That's why we wrote this book together, which is the Rapid Novel Blueprint. And
There
I
we
think,
go.
yes, right. I don't know what
There
is
you
going
are. You
this way and what is going that way. So now you know you'll be able to read it left to right if that's what you're into.
Well, you
So
see, the exciting thing is you're in Bogota in Colombia, and I'm in Sussex in England. We are many, many, many miles away from each other. We're holding up our
exactly,
book.
but we brought the same book to our conversation.
We did.
Right on. And it's so fun. And I want to ask you some questions because I know that we've done different interviews together after we put out the Rapid Novel Blueprint, and people, I'll never forget a question about what do you mean by fast? I don't think I write fast, but really, this is an efficient way to get through the process. It doesn't mean you have to write 3 or 4 books a year, but you're just writing, you're knowing the best way forward. And so that gives you the margin and the ability to experiment with different things and find out what you really like. And so these are kind of the craft tips that you have used and that I have coached on. And so I'd love to know when you get an idea, how do you develop that idea? How do you really get into an idea?
Okay, sure. So, when I have an idea, I tend just to write maybe a page or 2 pages of that idea, and I send that to my publisher. And he will look at it and normally say, I think we need to talk. Occasionally, he'll say, I don't think this is going to work. Go back to the drawing board. So we will normally hop onto a Zoom, which is actually the state that we're at now. So we had a Zoom like a week, yeah, last week, and sort of played around with some of my original ideas. And he asks the really good questions like, why would that character do that, or what are the act turns going to be, what are the big things that are going to happen, because I sometimes sort of run away without thinking all of that through. I always do, actually. So then he'll say, right, go away and just pad it out a bit more. So I then will turn that into maybe 3 or 4 pages of A4 of my ideas, and I'll put some ideas for the act turns in it. We'll have another Zoom, and if he likes that, he'll then say, right, go and talk to your editor, and then create a beat sheet. So with a beat sheet, that basically is a really, really detailed synopsis. So when I write a beat sheet, I write, I normally would start off with the background. So I list all the characters and sort of the basic things that are going to be happening in the story. And then I go into chapter 1 and I will write maybe 2 or 3 bullet points of what's going to be happening in that chapter. I do that for all the chapters. And then I highlight what the act turns are going to be, because in thrillers, you need to have something quite shocking happening normally between act 1 and act 2, and then something in the midpoint of the book, and then again between act 3 and act 4. And I will have Zooms with my editor, and sometimes Jan and I will have hours of Zooms, and other times the book will just go really fast, and we might just have a couple of hours, or not even that occasionally. So it just depends. Sometimes the plotting goes super easy, sometimes it doesn't. And at the end of that process, I typically will have written sort of between 6,000 and 8,000 words. That's before I've even started writing the book. So I know exactly what's going to be happening. I then send that back to the team at Incubator, and they have a look at it, and normally we'll have some questions, and then I can go to draft. And at that point, I actually start writing the book. So when I'm writing the book, I know exactly what's going to be happening. So it doesn't actually take me that long to write a book. So typically I can turn my manuscript around in sort of 4 to 6 weeks. So I type fast. I type as fast as I think. And some days I will write 2,000 words and occasionally I'll write 6,000 words. But I do tend to write every day at that stage. And that's my process.
Yes, and that is really, we have one of Miranda's beat sheets in this book as an example. And I think as a coach, I work with multiple genres, and this process is so magical because it puts the developmental edit before the writing of the novel rather than after, which is so much more efficient. When we talked about this together, it's so brilliant because you're working out all the problems that will come up in detail so that you don't have to rewrite entire chapters once you've gone down a tangent. And so, I want to break this down because it's so beautiful. So you start with a page which just has the concept, and then you take that concept and you amplify it into a beat sheet that is, let's say 6 to 8,000 words for an 80,000 word book. And so the beat sheet is actually a tenth of the length of the whole book. And so, yes, there, when I'm working with people so often, this makes commercial fiction come out so much more quickly because what people read for are the emotions and the twists and turns, and you can really get those down in 8,000 words. So I just love that process. If you want to look in more into that process, grab this because we put it all down on paper and we published it on Amazon. We self-published it on Amazon. So wonderful. And so
It's still number one. You know that it's still number
in
one
different
in one of its
categories.
categories, and I know, and it's been out for like well over a year.
It's a classic. Believe us. Believe us when we tell you it's a classic. It's a classic of the writing craft. But it also has a really simple concept. Do the developmental edit first. Think about the structure, get a really good idea of the whole book, and then you'll be able to execute it. And so I don't want us to start cutting out or anything like that. So I really would love to hear about what's coming next for you. Tell us everything. I think you have another book coming out in just a couple weeks.
So I've got a novella coming out on the 24th of May called The Plan, and that's I have written a couple of novellas before, but I've given those away as freebies. So if you go onto my website, which is mirandarijks.com, Rijks. I'm sure Emily will put that up. You'll
Exactly.
see that there's a download link there, and you can get a copy of the cheat, which is free. But also, I've written the plan because let I wanted to publish something in between my books because the Don't Answer the Phone came out on the 8th of March, and my next book will be coming out at the beginning of July. So I thought it'd be quite nice to release something in between. So the plan is a novella. It's about 20,000 words long, and it's exactly like all my other books. It's just shorter and sweeter, and not so sweet actually. It's got horrible characters in it, and
Your
it's got
books
some
aren't
big
always
twists in
sweet.
it.
It's just a
My
fact.
books are not sweet. No,
You're
no, I
not
don't do
Robin
sweet.
Carr. What can we
I don't
say?
do sweet. I don't do sweet. No, 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 no. I have horrible characters in my books, and I have horrible characters in the plan. And it's just a quick, easy read, and it will be selling for 99 cents or 99 pence on Amazon, or it's free in Kindle Unlimited. So that's coming out on the 24th of March. No, not March. We've been through March. May, sorry.
May.
And then the next full-length psychological thriller, I can't tell you the name of it yet because we haven't released that, but it will be coming out very soon. That will be, I think, published something like the first week in July. So it's exciting. That's all happening, and that book is currently with the proofreader. It's already been edited, and then it will go to advanced readers, and then launch in the summer. And I've already got an idea for the next one. So as normal, another busy year.
Yes, with so much excitement. And I'm so glad we took the time to celebrate the crossing 1 million books in sales, crossing it so fast. You got to 1.1 before you even knew about it. So, congratulations, Miranda. Our book is becoming a classic as well. And so, if you dream of becoming a novelist, keep going. We always have videos on my channel, so hit subscribe, and we will see you soon.
Bye.